Chapter 30. Dynasties of Influence. The hidden architecture of financial power. The spell of media is only half the ritual. The other half lies in the question few dare ask. Who writes the script? Who funds the studios, owns the satellites, prints the headlines, and pays the think tanks to create consensus? If media is the enchantment, then finance is the wand. And unlike fairy tales, the real-world sorcerers don't wear robes or hats. They wear tailored suits and quietly sign generational contracts behind private doors. While mass consciousness is shaped by screens and slogans, the infrastructure beneath it, the true skeleton of global power, is familial, financial, and fiercely guarded. The world's elite financial centers are not accidental gatherings of wealth. They are coordinated hubs, nodes in a centuries-old network of influence that transcends nations, elections, and even wars. Cities like London, New York, Geneva, Frankfurt, Paris, and Zurich are more than just economic capitals. They are the fortified temples of legacy wealth. And behind the institutions they house are names that have whispered through history, marrying, merging, and maneuvering to hold the reins of planetary control. This is not a new pattern. It is ancient. Dynastic wealth has always relied on bloodlines to preserve its spell. The Rothschild family, often reduced to conspiracy caricature, in truth orchestrated an extraordinary transnational banking dynasty. By the early 19th century, the 5 sons of Mayor Amschel Rothschild had set up banking houses across Europe: London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt, each acting independently yet in unspoken alliance. They financed both sides of conflicts, brokered deals between monarchs, and stayed untouched by the wreckage of war. Their family tree, like many financial dynasties, was pruned with precision, cousins marrying cousins to protect the gold. This was not love. This was leverage. Other families followed suit. In the United States, the Rockefellers amassed vast oil wealth through Standard Oil, then migrated into banking, politics, and global philanthropy. Their influence extended through Chase Bank and into organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the United Nations itself. They married into other industrial and banking families, weaving their name into the DNA of global policy. The same was true for the Warburgs, the Skiffs, the Morgans, the Loebs, a pan-Atlantic constellation of financiers who often operated behind the illusion of national difference. Modern finance is more veiled, but no less consolidated. While surnames may fade behind acronyms, the interconnectivity of global capital is more intense than ever. Asset management firms like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street hold major shares in nearly every large media company, pharmaceutical conglomerate, weapons manufacturer, and tech platform. These firms are themselves mutually invested in one another, creating a circular ownership structure so dense and opaque that few understand who owns what, or who truly calls the shots. Corporate boards are stacked with overlapping directors, the same faces rotating between industries, often educated at the same elite institutions and attending the same exclusive summits. Switzerland emerges again and again as a silent center in this geometry. Not only does it house the Bank for International Settlements, often called the central bank of central banks, but it also hosts the World Economic Forum in Davos, a meeting place for the global elite to coordinate economic narratives behind closed doors. Swiss banking secrecy laws, long protected by government neutrality, made the region a haven for legacy fortunes, hidden assets, and generational trusts. What Rome was to spiritual empire, Geneva has become to financial empire, neutral in appearance, but central to function. The old strategy remains. Keep the public busy fighting over elections while real power glides invisibly across continents. Presidents and prime ministers rise and fall. Stock markets crash and rebound. But the dynasties remain. They insulate themselves from volatility because they design it. Wars are financed, then rebuilt by the same hands. Governments borrow from the banks whose executives serve on advisory panels to those same governments. The media reports on crises, but rarely on the architects. This isn't a conspiracy, it's convergence. Marriage, education, and private associations have long served as the glue of elite coordination. Just as royal families once secured peace through matrimony, Modern elites solidify influence through high-level unions, philanthropic collaborations, and cross-ownership of estates and institutions. Schools like Eton, Harvard, and the London School of Economics produce leaders of banking, media, and statecraft who then meet again in policy networks like the Bilderberg Group or Bohemian Grove. They don't need to control every institution. They only need to control the gatekeepers. In some cases, these family lines are literal. In others, they are symbolic new players inducted into old structures. The tech billionaires of the 21st century are often portrayed as disruptors, but most of their capital is backed, shaped, or absorbed by the very financial institutions they claim to oppose. Social media platforms that promise to democratize communication still trace their largest shareholders back to the same handful of firms. Foundations and NGOs that claim to empower the global South are often chaired by former investment bankers or descendants of colonial capital. To speak of global finance without speaking of legacy, family, and intergenerational alliance is to miss the essence of power. Empires do not end, they rebrand. The old colonial ports became free trade zones. The aristocracy became the board of directors. The kingdoms became multinational corporations. But the spell of dominance remains, hidden behind complexity, normalized by tradition, and reinforced by a world conditioned not to ask where the money flows. When we speak of planetary awakening, we must see the full spell. Not only the media that hypnotizes us, but the ancient machinery of inheritance that funds the illusion. These forces do not need our permission, only our ignorance. To unspell ourselves is not only to resist propaganda, but to recognize the ancestral architecture behind modern finance. It is to understand that the world stage is not neutral, and that the families who built it have never stopped directing the play.